from a filmmaker's point of view, I liked the idea or the challenge on how can I tell a story that actually takes place just in the studio, with the monitors as the only window to the outside world. I myself, I love movies that actually draw their strength from a certain limitation of space. And on the other hand, as someone who is working in the media myself, this is a perspective that I could connect much more to, and that I felt is especially from today's point of view, very relevant.
Tim, thank you so much for sharing your time with us on the Movie Podcast.
Oh, no, of course. It's my pleasure.
How are you enjoying your time in Toronto so far?
Well, I only arrived. I've been here quite some time ago. I think it must be 12 years or so. My very first movie was at the Toronto Film Festival.
Nice.
So that's the last time I've been here, but it's nice to be back.
Yeah, no, it's lovely to have you back, and especially talking about a film like this, September 5th, on, it's such a powerful movie, and I think since watching it, it's something that has stayed with us, and something that immediately after watching, we just kind of all sat down and were talking about and really just living in the moment of that. So we just love to know for yourself, when you were first coming to this project, what was it about this story, this perspective, being within, the studios of ABC's at the Olympic Games that made you feel like this is a story that I need to tell next?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good question, because it's an interesting story behind this, because at the beginning we researched just about that day in general. I've studied in Munich at the film school, and in Munich this tragedy still feels very present still after all these years. So, for example, the locations where it actually happened today is the Studentenstadt, it's student housings. We shot a lot of student movies there, so I knew these locations, and you always knew this is where this tragedy happened. This is actually where the picture of the masked man was taken. And when we started to think about doing something that day, we started to do research. And what we then kind of early on learned is what an important role the media played on that day. And then it was one conversation that I had with Jeffrey Mason, who is the character that John Magara plays in the movie. And that to me was the initial moment, like listening to his stories of what they experienced in that control room and that day. I thought, like, wouldn't it be maybe interesting to tell the movie entirely from that perspective? And maybe, as you asked, what interested me about that approach, what I immediately was intrigued by is, first of all, from a filmmaker's point of view, I liked the idea or the challenge on how can I tell a story that actually takes place just in the studio, with the monitors as the only window to the outside world. I myself, I love movies that actually draw their strength from a certain limitation of space. And on the other hand, as someone who is working in the media myself, this is a perspective that I could connect much more to, and that I felt is especially from today's point of view, very relevant.
Especially when you're telling a story that, they have all, the cameras at their disposal, but they still feel so isolated, even though everything is happening, a few hundred feet away from them, right? So it's really interesting, like, juxtaposition of that.
Yeah, that's also something that we wanted to convey in the movie. Like, they were so close, but despite of that, we just have one scene where actually our main character opens the door and you see the outside world. And whoever has worked in a TV industry or so, that world when you're always in these studios, and actually it's a whole different universe in a way.
Definitely.
Yeah. You did such a phenomenal job of also just capturing the 70s. I mean, like, the way that the film looked, it felt so authentic to that time, and you blended it with this archival footage with Jim McKay. I'm curious, like, we tried looking it up, but we couldn't find out. Did you shoot this on film? Was this digital? Like, how did you kind of approach it?
I will tell that my DP, he will love that question, because of course that's what we try to achieve, right? We wanted to have a certain 70s look, as you said, so I'm glad you saw that in there. On the other hand, it was also important to us that the film feels modern in a way, because I want to say, like, a lot of the technology, I'm sure we're going to talk later about the technological devices in our movie. For us, it feels now very old, but for them, it was the newest technology that they could have in the TV business back then. So while it had that 70s look, we wanted it also to feel modern in a way. Right. And we wanted our own approach was as if we would be a documentary team from today, covering that scene or covering these people broadcasting on this crisis. So we did a lot of tests on film, how the film material would react, how it would, for example, with the monitors, certain things that sometimes you try to avoid, that monitors flicker or you see like little lines or blurred things. We embraced, right? We wanted that because we wanted the audience to feel as if you would be in that room, in that moment, and it shouldn't feel glossy or anything. It should be the real deal. So we tested on how would film material from back then react in these circumstances, and then the DP Marcus Förder did a great job on imitating this look, as I think, and while keeping in a way still keeping it, let's say, modern in a way.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you definitely get that vibe for sure.
Yeah, it's nice. I love seeing that, as someone who went to school for like film and television and seeing that technology being like recreated. I felt like you guys were doing a lot. Like we were actually able to pull up a broadcast at that moment.
Okay.
So
did you also have to thread in 16mm film?
No, luckily not.
Okay.
It was just we were just leaving VHSs. So it was just really cool to see that, and how like moments like burning in like the studio logo, or even just like the can we say the word terrorists?
Yes.
On TV, and it's like these little things like that, those attentions to detail that I think are really important to see.
Much appreciated. No, I'm personally also fascinated with that world. Like I was joking. Yeah. Like when I went to film school, it was like we had our first film had to be shot on film. You had to cut it actually on a Steamback, and I found all this analog world very interesting. And I thought, especially for today's audience, like the technology that we use today, it's interesting to see on how that was done back then.
Yeah. And this movie is going to bring up a lot of interesting questions, and it's coming out at a very interesting time. What are the questions that you're hoping audiences kind of ask themselves about media and how we're meant to perceive the news nowadays?
Yeah, I hope that audience, that at least we provide a way for audience to engage with questions about our complicated media environment and how we consume news, and also about the importance, but also the impact and complexity of live reporting. Mm-hmm. And I think there are interesting questions that we are raising. Like, for example, one question that they have in the movies, like, can we show violence on TV? And I think maybe I want to add that what I think about our movie is interesting, that the premise, you just mentioned it, like that you have a discussion now on how do we call these, how do we call them, what words do we use. In the movie, the premise of our movie, like maybe compared to a classical news drama, is that it wasn't people that weren't experienced or trained to report on this. It was actually sports people that suddenly had to make that switch to report on this tragic story. And this offers an interesting opportunity to, in a way, confront them with all these challenges and dilemmata that you're facing when you report on something like this.
Yeah, definitely. Tim, we're so grateful for your time. We're really looking forward to more people seeing this film and the discussions that it will come from it. And I really hope that we get to talk to you down the road again. So thank you so much.
I enjoyed this. It's already over. Yeah.
I know.
It goes by.
I would have loved to talk more about it. Thanks. I could feel your passion for the movie. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.